My name is Amy Zimmer, and I'm the Communications and Outreach Specialist with Marion SWCD, and I'll be the host of today's presentation. 2026 is an election year, and 5 of our 7 board positions are up for re-election this year. Whether you're ready to run or if you're just curious about getting involved, this is a great place to start. Or if you're just interested for more information on the election process from Marion SWCD, you can visit our website at the QR code on the bottom of your screen. We're pleased to have with us today Nenette Sequeira, Water Education Instructor with the City of Salem, for an engaging look at Salem's drinking water system. A little bit of background on Nenette. Nenette has lived and taught in Salem since 1994. She holds a Bachelor of Science degree in elementary education and French, along with a master's degree in literacy instruction. She brings with her more than 20 years of experience teaching elementary and middle school students, and she also spent 2 years in China teaching conversational English to postgraduate and college students. So we're so excited to have you with us today, Nenette, and we thank you so much for joining us.
Again, Nenette Sequeira with the City of Salem. Thank you, Amy and Marion Soil and Water for having me here today. This is a first experience for me, but I'm excited to do an online presentation. I am an elementary teacher, so if you find that I'm going into my elementary teacher mode, please forgive me, but as habit. But I'm so excited to share our amazing story of Salem's water, drinking water. And I didn't know about this a year and a half ago. And then researching and learning more about it, I just think it's so fascinating. And I'm amazed at all the process that we go through. And so this is what the presentation will go over. Just a brief history of Salem's drinking water system. If we have time, we'll do a hands-on activity. I'm going to be doing more of the hands-on and showing. And then Salem's water treatment process. How does Salem treat its drinking water? And it's pretty amazing. We are very fortunate to have in the city of Salem the drinking water access that we do have. Some people say that Salem's drinking water is the cleanest in Oregon. Some people say United States. I don't know if I go that far, but we are very fortunate to have pretty pure drinking water because we get our drinking water directly from mountain runoff, directly from Mount Jefferson, and I'll go into that in a little more detail. Then we're going to fast forward. I'm going to go kind of by decades here. 1840s is when Jason Lee came in. If you're familiar with Jason Lee, he was a Methodist missionary and he established a mission here. And one of the reasons why he established the mission was because the Willamette River was so pristine and safe and clean. And we had this huge drinking source of water right out here, right out in the Willamette River. And so he started his mission there. And also Mill Creek, he found that it was identified as a potential power source for local mills. As Mill Creek was coming in, he realized that, hey, in the 1840s, this would be a great place to, power our industries because they used a lot of water power in those days. Well, unfortunately, Mill Creek, they found out in the 1850s and 60s, was inadequate as a year-around creek. It was not consistent enough to power their mills, their flour mills, their sawmills, and later the woolen mill, the Willamette Woolen Company here. And bringing in people for the industry, and as Salem is getting more and more settled, more and more settlers coming, the Willamette River started getting polluted because not only were they drawing that water out, they were also releasing all of their sewage and everything else, dumping things in the river. And so they decided to, of course, they're going to be trying to filter the water out. So the first water attempt, trying to actually find a different source of maybe some clean water, is that they decided to build Salem Ditch. Salem Ditch goes from the North Santiam River to Mill Creek. It's about a 4.5-mile long man-made ditch in, I think it was 1855. They dug it by hand then. And they were able to divert some of that North Santiam water into Mill Creek. They never used Mill Creek or the Salem ditch as a drinking source, but they were able to get more of a flow year round having that natural ditch. And that ditch is there today. It goes through Salem or Staten, and it comes on into Salem. It meets with Mill Creek, and then Mill Creek comes on into Salem. In 1857, Salem was incorporated as a city, and it did not have a water system per se, and so there were a lot of shallow wells downtown Salem, but not every business or home had access to water. And so they would go down and draw out of these big barrels. They would get water out of the Willamette and bring it to their homes every day. One of the first delivery services, the first water department was started by a gentleman, Li Tong, of Chinese descent, and he would go down with these huge old oil barrels and fill them up and go up and down the streets of Salem selling water to local residences and businesses in downtown Salem. And you can see when they did start, there's some old pictures in here I think that are pretty interesting. The 1870s, they decided to start piping in their water. There also was an 80-foot wooden water tank installed near the Willamette River, and they were using that to pressurize water and to get water to the 1,200 residents of Salem at that time. They did establish their first Salem Water Company in the 1870s. They even built a water wheel, and it was near High Street. There was about a 30-foot drop there, and so there was a huge water wheel downtown. So access to all this water with the water tank and Willamette River, it had created a building boom in the downtown area because now they were getting fresh water from the Willamette, and they were able to run businesses and people building their homes downtown. In the 1880s and 1890s, like I said, they kept drawing out from the Willamette, but they also started dumping in. A lot of our sewage and direct lines right from the toilets went right into the Willamette from businesses in downtown. And it kind of became a waste disposal site, and it became very dangerously polluted. A lot of waterborne diseases like typhoid. So the leaders of Salem knew they had to find some other alternatives to what they were doing. And the mayor at the time, R.S. Wallace, he built a 2 million gallon reservoir on top of Fairmont Hill. That's one of our highest points here in Salem. And so they would pipe water from the Willamette up to Fairmont Hill in order to pressurize it to send the water throughout the businesses in Salem. Minto Brown, over by Minto Brown, they moved the drinking facility from downtown over to Minto Brown and Minto Brown Park, and they began a filtration system by using sand and gravel. And they built these big, they were almost like canals in the river that they would flow water through, and then they would pipe it into the Fairmont Hill up there on the hill, and that's how they got their water there. So they would use sand and rocks for their filtration system at that time. In the 1900s and 1920s, the Salem Water and Light Company was organized. Now, an interesting fact that I came across was that at one point, the Salem Water and Light Company was sold to a company in New York City. So for a period of about 4 years, I think 1920 to 1924, around that time, for a period of 4 years, there was a company in New York that owned our water rights here in Salem. Just thought that was kind of a strange connection there, but that didn't last long. And the city founders of Salem, they ended up buying it back. But the Willamette kept getting more and more polluted in the 1900s, and it just became a crisis. The smell and taste was terrible, even from these filters in Minto Brown. And so our founding fathers, they decided to go and they needed to look for other water sources. They're like, okay, this Willamette is just getting too polluted. And so in 1909, the mayor, G.F. Rogers, he started looking at the North Santiam River thinking, you know what? the North Santiam comes directly from Mount Jefferson. We need to tap into that river somehow and get our water from there instead of the Willamette River. So he started a committee, a Mountain Water Committee, they called it, in 1909. But it wouldn't be until 27 years later that that dream actually came true, that we actually started getting our water from the North Santiam River. 1930s and 1940s, the city purchased an island. It was called Staten Island, and it's an island a little east of Staten, and it's about a mile and a half long, about 250 acres, I believe. And there's a story of a gentleman when they were looking around for places to draw out the water out of the North Santiam. A gentleman sent a letter to the mayor saying, "Hey, I've got this island in the middle of the North Santiam. I'm willing to sell it to the city if you're interested." So I believe the cost was very low, and so they purchased this private island. It was called Staten Island, but it was later named Guerin Island after the water, one of our first water managers. So we call it Guerin Island now, and that is to this day where we get our water from. But before that, the Willamette Slough, there's a picture of it there to the side over in Minto Brown. The Willamette Slough just got too polluted. So in 1937, they actually started building slow sand filters on the island, and they built laid pipe, a lot of wooden pipe, from Staten all the way to Salem. It was about a little over, I think it was around 13 miles. And they laid this 36-inch pipe into Salem, and we started getting water finally from the North Santiam, which was directly from the mountain. Fairmont Hill, they rebuilt that reservoir up on Fairmont Hill, so now it would hold 10 million gallons. So the North Santiam River water would flow into Fairmont Hill, into that reservoir there, and then go out to the residents of Salem. In 1952, they realized they needed to have a bigger reservoir. You can see this picture of this, almost looks like a little worm over here. This is Franzen Reservoir, and it's in Turner. If you've never, you would never know it's there. And they built that in 1952, and they have two different sides to it here so that they can switch and clean different sides if they need to. And the story goes that Franzen and Guerin, two of our leaders in our city, they sat down and they drew this design on the back of an envelope because we don't have any blueprints of the original design. And someone mentioned, oh yeah, they just sat down one day and drew this design because they wanted it to hug the mountain and not be something that stands out, that people wouldn't know it was there. And if you don't know it's there, it's up on the hill. You actually have to drive up to it, but it is there in Turner. And we use that today. And that's where our water stays for the chlorine to start working in it before we send it into Salem. It is covered by this amazing tarp, polypropylene tarp that we build. We have to replace it every 25, 30 years. And it's coming up for replacement. It's actually about a couple years overdue. And so, but that's millions of dollars to replace it. So we're planning to do that very soon. 1953, Detroit Dam was built, and Big Cliff Dam to control the water. The Army Corps of Engineers controls the dam, but we have good workings right now, or we did in the past with the Corps, and they keep us informed, and we let them know how much water is coming down the North Santiam. So that's pretty 1950s to the 1980s. We're going to go into the 1990s now. So we're kind of going into more modern times here. In 1996, Woodmansee, if you've heard of Woodmansee Park, Woodmansee built an aquifer storage and recovery system. This system is actually, there's a big underground lake right below Woodmansee Park, and an aquifer, and it's part of the Columbia River basalt aquifer, and it's a natural aquifer that's about 365 feet deep, and we use that as a storage system, and we use it to this day. And what we do is from Franzen, after Guerin Island treatment, the water goes to Franzen. From Franzen, some of it goes up to Woodmansee ASR, and we pump it down into the ground. And it is a sealed aquifer, so there's water not coming into it or leaking out of it. And we actually use that as a reservoir. And during the months that we need that extra water, usually during the summer months, we'll pump water back up out of the reservoir. We test it. Sometimes we have to add a little chlorine, but it's already been filtered, and we send that out to our home. So it's one of our big reservoirs there in Salem. But you would never know it's there if you go into Woodmansee Park. Over on the right, you can see a little pump house with some fencing around it, and that's it. There's a big lake underneath South Salem. I thought that was pretty interesting. So in 2018, there were high levels. I don't know if you remember, there was high levels of cyanotoxins up in Detroit Reservoir. And unfortunately, our filtration system on Guerin Island could not keep up or could not destroy the cyanotoxins. And so it was getting past our filtration system. And so we knew we had been using this system since, 1930s. We knew that in 2018, we had to do something a little different. We needed to add another barrier that would clean the water. So the Frank Malden Ozone Treatment Facility was started on the island, and we now use ozone to help clean our water. Not only do we use our slow sand filtration, the water still goes through our slow sand filters, then we put it through an ozone. And I'm going to explain a little bit more about what the ozone does. It's pretty amazing. It, again, is natural. And the slow sand filter is just sand and gravel, natural products. And also the Frank Malden ozone treatment is using ozone, which is just basically oxygen and electricity. And I'll explain that in a minute. And that was ozone is able to destroy cyanotoxins. So in 2022, that facility came online, and we filter all of our water through that ozone right now to this day. And it keeps going. So here is a picture of Woodmansee storage and recovery system. You can see we pump it down into that aquifer, and we can store up to 700 million gallons of water down there. We're actually trying to do a little bit more because of the drawdown that's coming up. We want to make sure that that is nice and full, so that will be part of our backup and part of our resource that we're able to draw from that water. If the drawdown becomes too turbid, if the North Santiam becomes too turbid. Speaking of the drawdown, I'll explain a little bit about what's going to happen. Some people I know have questions. They've heard that Salem is going to be, Detroit Lake is going to be drawn down, which affects our water because it affects the North Santiam River. So what the drawdown is, let's go back. In 2025, you might have heard of a state of emergency that Salem declared. It wasn't because we had awful water. It was because, or something was coming down. It was because we needed to tap into funds to start preparing for the drawdown. So we have been building 3 new wells on Guerin Island. We've been improving a new pump station up in Kaiser. We're going to be able to use some of Kaiser's water. And we've also been improving the Woodmansee ASR system, and so that we can also pump more water into that. What the drawdown is, they are going to lower Detroit Lake. Well, right now it'll be the river, but they're going to lower the water behind Detroit Dam to 30 feet below it's ever been. And the reason is there's an endangered species. It's for the fall Chinook salmon run. And these little guys, the fish are not able to get over the dam. When they built the dam, they did not build in a fish ladder. We have been transporting fish around the dam and back around the dam So with the drawdown, we're hoping that the young fish will be able to swim down because the holes on the dam are too low. They can't get down to it when the water levels are higher. So we're going to lower the dam, or excuse me, Army Corps of Engineers is going to lower the level. And behind that dam, what we're worried about is that there's going to be a lot of silt and dirt and debris. And that's going to cause high turbidity. The turbidity might be so high that our slow sand filters, which are used to cleaning already clean mountain water from the river, but this turbidity might be too high that our filters can't keep up with it. So that's why we're taking these extra measures and improving these different areas around Salem and Kaiser and digging the wells so that when it does happen, that we'll have some backups if our filters can't. We're working with the Army Corps of Engineers and, they're letting us know what the turbidity of the river will be, and so that we can make adjustments and that hopefully we won't be caught off guard. So that's going to happen this year, the end of November. It should go on for about 3 weeks, and then it will take a couple of weeks for the water level to go back up. And so that's what we are working on right now at the City of Salem, is getting prepared for that. Our water, again, and the reason why it's so sweet mountain water, and you can read about it. This is a book written by Frank Malden. He goes into a lot more details, a lot numbers and different details about how we got the water, the story of Salem's water, the struggle to tap Mount Jefferson and protect the North Santiam River. So this has been something that's been going on for a while, but our water basically comes directly from Mount Jefferson and Three Finger Jack and flows into Detroit Reservoir. And there's not any really big municipalities between where we draw it out and the mountain. So we're getting fresh spring mountain water right off of the mountain. We do not have a lot of chemicals, forever plastics, or anything in our water because we're getting it directly from the mountain. So we are actually very lucky about the amazing water we have here in Salem. Here's a picture of Mount Jefferson, of course, and how it's just part of our watershed that we're getting our water from. So here's a little closer of our City of Salem's watershed. You can see Mount Jefferson, Three Finger Jack, water runs down, and then right here in Guerin Island outside of Staten, we send it to Franzen. We treat it here and we send it to Franzen. Turner takes some of our water, and then all of Salem, and we even go over here into West Salem. Now, what's amazing is all the pipes, and I believe it's like now we have over like 19 miles of pipes. All these pipes are gravity fed. Guerin Island's elevation is actually higher than the City of Salem. So we save millions of dollars being able to pipe in this water, all natural gravity fed, into Salem from the North Santiam River. And I just think that's pretty amazing. Now we do pump it there. The water mains do go under the Willamette into West Salem, and we do pump it. We do have some pumps over there, but pretty much it is a gravity fed system. So now we're going to switch gears. I'm going to talk about how the City of Salem actually filters their water. So we're going to do a little challenge here. I'm going to try to see how this works. I talked about we use a slow sand filtration system, how we clean our water from the North Santiam. So what I do is I have 2 filters here. All I've done is taken a liter bottle, cut it in half. I've put a coffee filter on the end of it. And these are the filters. I take these into classrooms. We do the filter challenge in there, and also for my other water wisdom presentations. So I have 2 of them. Now, the materials I'm using today are sand, fish gravel, pea rocks. So there are 3 different materials. These are all the materials we use at, not the fish rocks, but we're going to say those are small rocks. These are the materials that we use at Guerin Island in our slow sand filters. Now, order matters. So one is the correct way, how we use it out in Guerin Island, and one is the opposite way. Now, how does water, first of all, if it's flowing through city, we're going to talk about the human impact on water. How does water get dirty? Again, we've been pretty lucky. Our water doesn't really go through this, but water does get dirty. So these are different things that how water can get dirty. Oh, I didn't share, am I? I'm not sharing. I'll just say them really quick. So pet waste, dirt, household chemicals, trash, pesticides, fertilizers. So when you open up your faucet, you want, in City of Salem, when you turn it on, you want your water to look like this. Now, unfortunately, again, because of human impacts, we pollute our water from roads. We have plastics from cars, from the oil. If we're not taking care of our cars, they're leaking. And all of that water that runs off of parking lots and roads and sidewalks, they go into our storm drains. And those storm drains lead directly to a creek. We don't clean any water that goes down a storm drain. So think about things you've seen on the street. There's trash. We have trash on the streets. And so trash gets in our water systems, in our creeks, and that can make it dirty. We have soil. If we don't, erosion, you've heard of erosion, you've heard of the beachy fires we had up on our, in our Santiam Canyon there, and a couple years ago. And all the ash and the soil from the trees burning down went into the creek, and the soil can actually pollute. If it's too high turbidity with soil, then the fish can't breathe, and everything in the water is going to be it will die from too much dirt, too much high turbidity. Animal waste. If you've ever been to a park and saw, maybe someone didn't clean up after their pet, it's pretty gross. But what's really bad about it is that animal waste has E. coli in it. And if that washes down into our storm drains, into our creeks and streams, that can cause a lot of pollution. It can make people sick and other animals sick. So pretty soon, water that was super pure is looking pretty gross. So here we have some really gross water. And now we're going to try to filter it. We're going to run this water through our 2 filters. So I'm going to pour a cup of this lovely water into one filter. And then I'm going to pour another cup into the other filter. And we're going to see which filter acts. It's the same exact materials, only it's a little different in the order of the material. So we're going to let those sit for a little bit, and we're going to go back to our presentation, and I'm going to talk about how the slow sand filters actually work. Here's Guerin Island. I just thought maybe for those of you that don't know where Guerin Island is, here's just kind of a reference. Here's Staten, and you can see Guerin Island is right here in the Santiam River. We have Bennett Dam, Upper Bennett Dam, Lower Bennett Dam. So these are our slow sand filters. Because we have so much land out there, not very many city works around the United States use a slow sand anymore because it takes up a lot of land. But fortunately, because of this island, we have a lot of land. We have 7 slow sand filters. They cover about 15 football fields, if you're thinking about what the size of them are. And we get water right out of the Santiam River, and we put it through a filter, and this is what the filter is. So underneath that water, this is a fun German word. I don't know German, so I'll do my best. Schmuzdecke, which literally means dirty blanket. And this is where the magic happens. This is actually naturally grown good bacteria form on top of the sand. And these are helpful microbes at work. We have amoeba, vorticella, spirotrichia. These are the good guys that eat the bad guys. The bad guys being flock, algae, E. coli, viruses. And so what's happening up here is that this is the first defense of our filtration. So the water coming off of the North Santiam River, again, is the turbidity is pretty low, so it's already pretty clear. But of course, there are those bad microbes and bacteria and viruses that we wouldn't want to drink. And so the sand actually filters that out. About 8 inches down, or 200 millimeters, E. coli is now out of our water system. After about a foot down, 350, you have 98 of your viruses are inactivated. Giardia and other bacteria are now out of our water system. And then it flows on down through about 4 inches of rock, 4 inches of medium rock, and at the bottom, 10 inches of large rock. And the rock is basically there to uphold also the sand, to be a good foundation for the sand. Then along the bottom of those slow sand filters, we have pipes that the water leaks into. And for up until 2018, that's about how, 2022, that's about the extent of how we would clean water. We would add a little chlorine. We have to add fluoride by law. We have to add the soda ash that helps protect. This is baking soda basically, and it helps coat pipes. So if pipes are lead or copper, it will help coat the pipes. And we send it to your homes. That was it. And so that's why when the cyanotoxins of 2018 happened and they were getting through this filter, we're like, okay, we need to have another layer of defense here, because we can't send obviously cytotoxins into your faucets. This is our ozone treatment facility right there. It's right next to some of the slow sand filters. So water from the North Santiam goes through one slow sand filter. Then we send it to the ozone facility, treatment facility. Then we put it back in another slow sand filter. Same thing. It goes back in, and then we add a little bit of chlorine. We have to, by law, add a certain amount of chlorine. And usually it's the minimal amount, just because our water is already so clean coming off the mountain. We have to add fluoride, and we add a little bit of soda ash to make sure that the pH is balanced there. Okay, so that's basically, then we send it to your homes. Isn't that amazing? Goes to Franzen Island, then we send it to your home. So what is ozone? We actually make our own ozone out here. So it's pretty cool. Ozone is one of the world's strongest cleaning agents, stronger than bleach. And it uses oxygen. So for those of you that don't know what it does, I'm just going to go into a little bit. But you can see it provides safe drinking water. The water tastes better, clarity all year. It reduces our chlorine use. We don't have to put as much chlorine in it anymore because the ozone is already sterilizing most of our water. This is kind of a visual of how ozone is made. Ozone is made from an oxygen molecule. So oxygen is O2. So here are our two oxygen molecules. And what happens in ozone is we take an electrical charge, a strong zap, like a lightning bolt, and we separate those two oxygen molecules. Now they're atomic oxygen. They don't like to be by themselves. So one of those oxygen molecules are going to attach to another two oxygen molecules. So what do we have now? O3, and that's ozone. Ozone is O3, one of the strongest cleaning agents on Earth. And that's one reason after a thunder or lightning storm, the air smells really fresh. Well, lightning is making ozone and is cleaning our air. Is that amazing? So unfortunately, ozone is very unstable. It only will be in this form for maybe 10 to 15 minutes at the most. And during that time, we pipe in water and we mix the ozone in with our water that's been filtered. And those ozones will go in and like for the cyanotoxins, it will attack the cyanotoxin. It destroys it from within. It attracts the bad bacteria and it just destroys those cells from within. And afterwards, O3, sometimes it will just dissipate into oxygen again. If there is any O3 left in the water, we can add a little bit of hydrogen peroxide. So hydrogen peroxide, I believe, is H2O2. So H2O2 and O3, you're going to get H2O and O2. O2 is oxygen. We just let it loose into the atmosphere as regular oxygen, and H2O is pure water. So that's how ozone, just a brief little chemistry lesson here, how ozone actually cleans our water. So afterwards, after it goes through the ozone facility treatment, we put it through another slow sound filter just to make sure all those leftover cells that have been destroyed are out of our water system. And then we add our little chlorine that we have to and fluoride that we have to, send it to your homes. So here, this is just kind of a quick overview. Taking water out of the North Santiam, our roughing filters or the slow sand filters. We have a little pump station. Here's our ozone. It goes through our contact room, put it through another slow sand filter, and then we have to add our chlorine and chemicals here. It goes to Franzen Reservoir. Chlorine has to have so many minutes of contact with water before we can send it out to you. So that's why we kind of have to also hold it in Franzen Reservoir just to make sure that that chlorine has been working and everything's good to go. Along this whole system, we are constantly testing. We test before, we test after. So there's a lot of water quality sampling going on here. And then again, this is another picture of Franzen Reservoir at the top there. That big tarp is just amazing how huge it is. It has to be covered. I can't remember how many years ago it was that they required all treated water afterwards needs to have a cover, and so that's why we had this cover custom made for us. And let's look at our filters and how we did. So you remember our water that we started with, it had pretty high turbidity. We ran it through the filter. So here's filter 1. I mean, it's not going to be pure, but it's definitely a lot cleaner than with what we started here. And so that's filter 1. Let's look at filter 2. And here is filter 2. Now, can you tell which one is the right filter 1 or filter 2? So filter 1 is the one with the rocks are at the bottom, the bigger rocks, the pea rocks, and then you have fish gravel, and then you have sand on top. Filter 2 is the sand is on the bottom, then you have your fish rocks, and then your pea rocks are on top. So order matters, and that's our slow sand filtration system out on Guerin Island. It's pretty amazing, using all natural materials. That's what I love. I mean, our water, again, is Sweet Mountain water. It's clean by natural ways, and what we have to put in it, we do put in it. Okay, so that is about the story of our drinking water, a little history, a little activity, a little how we treat our water at Guerin Island. I am having a tour of the island June 26th. I'm doing actually a bike tour. It's called Water Wheels. I can send it, Amy, I can send you a flyer. And if you're interested, it's about 1.5 mile bike tour. Well, actually, total would be 3 miles. But Guerin Island is beautiful. It's just one of my happy places because it's public is not allowed out there unless there's a special, invitation. So I am having a bike tour of Guerin Island. If you like to ride your bikes, you are welcome to sign up.
Yeah, I think that was a very thorough overview. It's really amazing being from Salem, like you mentioned, like some of these facilities that are right under our noses and under our feet even, and you wouldn't even know. So it's amazing. It looks like we do have one question in the chat. Where is the ozone treatment plant?
It is, you saw where the slow sand filters were. There's like a road right next to it. It's right there on the island. It's just really right next to the slow sand filters on the island. We actually bring in liquid oxygen. We have that delivered. I think it's like 397 degrees frozen liquid oxygen. We heat that up, and that is how, and then we send it into our treatment, and we actually make ozone right there. We send that electrical charge between into the oxygen, and then we mix it. So we're actually making our own ozone out there.
I appreciated the background on the science of it too. It's a good chemistry recap for all of us, myself included. It looks like we have one other question. Do we add chloramine or just chlorine to the water?
As far as I know, just the chlorine is what I've been told.
Yeah, chlorine and potash. Like, wonderful. I got a thumbs up. Um, all right, so we do have another question. How do the fish get past Big Cliff Dam?
Big Cliff Dam. You know what? There is a fish hatchery right below the dam. I don't know if there's a fish ladder in Big Cliff or not. I don't know that much about Big Cliff. I just know they can get past it safely, but it's Detroit Lake is the one that they can't get past. They either go over the spillway and then it's so far up they die, or they can go through the turbines. We do have a little hydroelectric power out there at Detroit Lake, but the turbines are spinning, and so they don't make it through the turbines either. So, we're trying to find out, because the Endangered Species Act's asking us to find out other options besides trucking the fish around, which we do. We truck them around the dam and truck them back around the dam, and so they're young fish. So in the summer, I see the question there, Gary. In the summer or in the fall, late fall, it'll be the young fish going out to the ocean.
Yes, a turbine doesn't. It's almost like the old school game of Frogger, a little
Yes.
bit. Trying to get through a fish going through a turbine is similar to a
Right.
frog trying to get through traffic.
Yeah, I know. I tell my
Unfortunately.
students, come on, you engineers, come up with a good solution to how we can get these fish back and forth, because Detroit Dam it's such a narrow canyon. It's so tall that I guess a fish ladder is not possible.
I think just one question I have, Nanette, is
Mm-hmm.
what, you mentioned some of the road pollution. You mentioned some pollutions that we get on our roadways and how that flows into our water. And so just kind of a general, like, what can folks do to help, even if it's not necessarily our drinking water, but just our local waterways, like
Mm-hmm.
what can we do to ensure that, we're doing our part to help keep our water clean?
Oh, yeah, of course. Well, of course, plant natives, anywhere along a roadway or creekway. If you can plant native plants, the more plants along a water, the better. Don't put things down storm drains. Never. I saw a guy the other day smoking a cigarette and he was dumping all the ash in the storm drain. And I'm like, those lead directly to a creek. So it's pretty amazing what goes down a storm drain. If you're washing your car, wash it on your front lawn or go through a car wash, because if you wash it on your driveway and you rinse it off, all the oils and dirts and soap is going to run into the street, into the storm drains, and all storm drains lead directly to creeks or streams. We do not clean that water. So, just being aware of what is going down your driveway or the street, and what you're putting into the storm drains is a really big one.
No, that's wonderful advice. It's great. And definitely for folks that, Nanette mentioned native plants and some vegetation options. And so I just want to express that the district, we absolutely, that is up our alley. And so if folks don't really know where to get started with that, but are interested in that process, definitely reach out to the district and we're more than happy to help come to a site visit or come to just a chat via email or over the phone, and we're willing to help folks out with that. So definitely reach out. It looks like we got one last question as we wrap things up today. It says, so filtering our drinking water is redundant.
Okay, so you're talking about the water that comes to your home. So our job is to make sure that your neighborhood is getting the drinking water, the pipes. We pipe it into a main line in your neighborhood. Now, some people, it depends on if you have an older home or what pipes between the main line and your house. And those are the contractor's responsibility and your responsibility. So the pipes between our main line and your house can get corroded. and can't. We've gotten almost all of our lead pipes out, and but sometimes there's still some erosion that's going on inside those pipes. So if you're finding that your water is colored, discolored, or tastes bad, it's probably because the pipe's coming into your house. And so you may have to filter because of that. But if the pipes are okay, yeah, if it's coming out clean and natural, it's better than some of the bottled water we buy. It's sweet mountain water.
This is a really good point. Like definitely based off what you've described, yeah, with the filtration system and how clean our water is, it's definitely good to keep an eye, especially with some of our older homes, and important to keep those things up to date and
Yeah.
good to know where to look if it's not, the filter and the source. We have one other question that just came in. What does the City of Salem, or does the City of Salem do anything for stormwater management?
Well, we have a whole team that are constantly checking our storm drains. Every time a storm comes in, we have teams out testing water. We have teams out watching the creek levels. We have over 90 miles of creek just within the city limits of Salem. And so we have big vacuum trucks. My coworker goes out and he opens up all the manholes. He looks inside storm drains, catch basins, to look for that pollution. If he sees there's a lot of garbage in there, he'll call in a vacuum truck, and that vacuum truck can come in and suck it out. Now there are more like a colander filter in some of the filters where it can filter out a lot of the large trash before it goes into the creek, but some of our old storm drains don't have that. And so, we just really try to keep as much garbage off our streets as we can.
So I think that just ties full circle, Nanette, into, clean water. It's definitely, yes, the city is working hard and doing, what they can to do that, but it's also just a reminder that our clean water, soil, our community is up to active participation from our community members and
Oh,
as
definitely.
well. And
Yeah,
so
everybody can make a difference, at your home, when you're traveling, whatever, you can make a difference, just by doing little things to help.
And I want to say thank you so much. Like thank you so much to you, Nanette, for
Oh,
being here. That
you're
was
welcome.
so interesting and informative and just
Oh, good.
really eye-opening, and all the visuals were
Well,
super helpful in connecting the pieces. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. I hope that you gained as much of this, gained as much from this as I did. And we just really appreciate everyone being here. I do want to put out a reminder that we will not have a first Friday for the month of July, and we will be regrouping in August for the next event in our Emerald Ash Borer series, and we will be joined by our Marion SWCD staff who will be discussing Emerald Ash Borer site preparation and weed management in the face of Emerald Ash Borer, which is an invasive pest that is, destroying some of our native ash trees. So if you're interested in that, I do encourage folks to review our previous First Fridays, in which we've discussed emerald ash borer, and please reach out to the district if there's anything that we can assist with.